8 years ago, my life took an unexpected turn. It all started on an ordinary day when Dylan and I were wandering aimlessly through the streets, bored and looking for something, anything, to break up the monotony. That's when we spotted them, two women sitting on a park bench, engrossed in conversation, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Without thinking, Dylan and I exchanged a quick look that said, "Why not?" Approaching strangers wasn't exactly new for us, but this time felt different. Dylan took the lead, introducing us as Paul and Mario, a playful alias he pulled out of thin air. He greeted them with his usual over-the-top charm and suggested we all head out to have some fun. One of the women, Hannah, wasn't the type to be easily impressed. With a sharp tone and a raised eyebrow, she shot back, "And what exactly do you mean by fun?" Her quick wit caught me off guard, and before I knew it, I jumped into the conversation. "You know," I said, "dancing, champagne, something to make tonight unforgettable." To our surprise, they agreed. Hannah and her friend Amelia had the kind of energy that made you feel like anything was possible. Hanging out with them was like stepping into a whirlwind of excitement, and it wasn't long before Dylan and I found ourselves falling for them. Hannah and I started seeing each other regularly, and before I knew it, she became the center of my world. Dylan was just as smitten with Amelia, and a year later, we both got married, 2 ceremonies held just weeks apart. It felt like the start of a perfect chapter in our lives. But perfection doesn't last forever. Life has a way of testing the bonds you think are unbreakable. For Dylan and Amelia, the cracks showed early. Amelia's free-spirited nature, which had been so alluring at first, became a source of tension in their marriage. Dylan kept most of his struggles to himself, but after 2 years, he announced out of the blue that they were divorcing. Hannah and I carried on, but something shifted. By the time we got married, I had landed a great job and was starting to make decent money. My focus turned toward building a stable life for us, while Hannah seemed intent on holding on to the carefree lifestyle we had once shared. The first real cracks in my marriage to Hannah showed up one night after we'd been married for about a year. I came home late from work to find the house empty. By the time she stumbled through the door around 2 a.m., tipsy and unapologetic, my patience was wearing thin. When I asked where she'd been, she waved me off with a breezy, "Just having some fun." Her dismissive attitude stung. The life we'd built together, one I worked hard to provide, seemed like an afterthought to her. The next morning, I brought it up, hoping for an honest conversation. Instead, she snapped at me, defensive and unwilling to listen. My frustration boiled over. I told her if I saw this kind of behavior again, I wouldn't hesitate to end things. That confrontation marked a turning point. Hannah realized I was serious, and to her credit, she changed. The late nights stopped, and she seemed more invested in our life together. Over the years, she took on more responsibility, even spending time caring for her sick aunt. Twice a month, she stayed at her aunt's house to help with chores her aunt couldn't manage. For a while, I thought we were back on track. Then came the night of Dylan's invitation. He'd recently re-entered my life after his divorce and invited us to an event at a club called Tropic. Known for its extravagant shows, the club promised a night of fun and surprises. The evening started innocently enough with a few drinks and a performance of dancers. But then things took a bizarre turn. A man calling himself Terminator strutted onto the stage, commanding attention with his towering frame, fiery red beard, and muscular build. As he performed, peeling off layers of clothing to the crowd's cheers, he locked eyes with Hannah. "Hannah," he called out, his voice ringing through the room, "I hope you'll be as generous as you were last week." Time seemed to stop. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. Last week, Hannah had told me she was visiting her aunt. Her face went pale, and for a brief moment, I saw the guilt written all over her. After the show, I excused myself, my thoughts a jumble of anger and disbelief. I needed answers. Finding Terminator wasn't difficult. He was backstage, basking in the aftermath of his performance, and he didn't seem the least bit surprised when I approached him. My demand for the truth was met with amusement. He leaned back, clearly enjoying the situation, and offered to tell me everything, for a price. $1,000 later, he spilled the details. According to him, Hannah and Dylan were regulars at the club, and their connection was obvious. But that wasn't the worst of it. He revealed that Hannah's aunt, the one I believed she'd been helping, had passed away long ago. For years, Hannah had been using her as an excuse to cover her clandestine outings with Dylan. When I confronted Hannah, there was no denying it anymore. Cornered and exposed, she admitted everything. The affair, the lies, the double life she had been living, it all came pouring out. She tried to justify it, pleading that we had been together for so long, that she had gotten lost in the routine of our marriage and was seeking excitement. Her words fell on deaf ears. Whatever bond we had once shared felt irreparably broken. The moment Hannah admitted to her affair, everything in our marriage unraveled. She tried to explain herself, spinning her actions as a lapse in judgment born out of boredom and routine. Her words felt hollow. The betrayal wasn't just in her actions, but in the web of lies she had carefully crafted over the years. "You can't just leave me like this," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. But the decision had already been made. I wasn't going to stay with someone who had so thoroughly disrespected the life we built. I reminded her that the apartment was mine. I had bought it before we were married. Aside from the furniture, there was nothing left for us to divide. As the realization of what she'd lost hit her, her demeanor shifted from desperation to resignation. She didn't fight me when I asked her to leave. Hannah's affair with Dylan didn't pan out the way she must have envisioned. While I was severing ties with her, she discovered Dylan's affections weren't exclusive. He had been seeing multiple women during their time together, using his charm to string them all along. When their relationship imploded, Dylan blamed Hannah for causing our fallout, leaving her even more isolated. The fallout for Dylan was swift and decisive. He didn't bother reaching out to explain or apologize. Whatever friendship we once shared was gone, buried under the weight of his betrayal. Hannah's life took an unexpected turn. With nowhere to go and no one to lean on, she ended up working at the very care home where her aunt had supposedly lived. Ironically, the place she had used as a cover for her deceit became her refuge. The job came with social housing and meals, enough to keep her afloat, but far from the life she once had. For me, the weeks following the revelations were a blur. The pain of betrayal lingered, but so did a strange sense of clarity. The marriage I thought I had was an illusion, built on trust that Hannah had systematically destroyed. Walking away wasn't just the right choice, it was the only choice. In the months that followed, I worked to rebuild my life, piece by piece. There was no escaping the scars Hannah's betrayal had left, but as time passed, the pain became less sharp. I channeled my energy into my work, hobbies, and reconnecting with friends who had always been there for me. Hannah faded into the background of my life, her name becoming a distant memory rather than a fresh wound. Occasionally, I heard snippets about her through mutual acquaintances. She had settled into her role at the care home, leading a quiet life far removed from the whirlwind that once defined her. As for Dylan, he disappeared entirely. His smooth-talking charm had worn thin, and the friendships he relied on evaporated when his true nature came to light. There was no grand reckoning, no moment of closure between us. He simply vanished from my life, leaving nothing behind but disappointment. Looking back, I sometimes wondered if there had been warning signs I missed, moments where I could have intervened and steered our marriage away from its eventual collapse. But those thoughts didn't linger long. I realized that staying in the past only gave power to the pain. Walking away from Hannah wasn't easy, but it was necessary. There's no salvaging a relationship without trust, and once it's shattered, there's no glue strong enough to put the pieces back together. Today, I live with a clarity I didn't have before. The experience taught me to value honesty and respect above all else, and to recognize that sometimes letting go is the healthiest choice you can make. If it resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories of resilience and lessons learned. Until next time.